At the very start of the Chicago Bulls season with only one game in the books so far, and the Bulls taking on the Milwaukee Bucks today, but I'm talking about certain aspects of the team that will determine how high the ceiling is for this team this season. We're also going to preview today's game against the Milwaukee Bucks and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. And there's been a lot made over the last 48 hours in regards to the Chicago Bulls and the way that they play, between the defense, the shooting, all these type of things. And I have a list of things that I put together that I think will help, will determine just how far the season goes for the Chicago Bulls, and how high the ceiling is on these things could very well be some of the most important storylines to watch as the season develops. In no way, don't worry about it. I'm not going to try to sell you on me knowing what the ceiling is for these things. So that's not what this is about, but it is about to have the conversation around this. These areas could determine the season for the Bulls. The first one is the defense, right? How high is the defensive ceiling for the Chicago Bulls team? And one of the reasons why I bring that up is this. The Bulls generated 108 possessions in game one, which is really good. Now, 21 of those possessions ended up in turnovers, unfortunately, for the Chicago Bulls. But that 108 possessions is like 10 to 12 possessions more than what the Chicago Bulls averaged last year. So when I look at this offense, right, and the offense still has its kinks to work out. In no way am I saying the offense has been perfect yet, because it has not by any stretch of the imagination. But I think if this Bulls team is going to run at the pace that we've seen in preseason and seen so far in one game during the regular season, the Bulls offense is going to get enough possessions to be able to be in most games, right? But you're going to need your defense. And I think the thing that I'm looking at here is how high is the ceiling defensively for this team, right? That's going to determine a lot. I've said it before. If this team can be anywhere, I think, between 17 and like 20th, 21st, maybe defensively, I'm not saying that's great. And it's not great. It's still in the bottom third of the league, right? But it could be good enough to where at that point in time, you're then looking at it and saying, all right, the Bulls are giving up 118, 119 points per game, but they're scoring 121, right? Or they're averaging 120, 120.5. So they're in a lot of games, right? And I think it just comes down to effort defensively for this team. That is one of the biggest aspects. Like, the Bulls they weren't a competent defense in the first game. The fact that we ran a 2-3 zone and that players did not even run that 2-3 zone correctly, they were out of place in that. It's like they didn't understand the purpose of the 2-3 zone. That's things that you think can not necessarily work itself out, but just better awareness on that defensive side, better execution with the defensive philosophies that the Chicago Bulls are trying to do can help a lot, right? And so, the defense in the paint is going to be a concern, but I just don't see any realistic way other than just having better awareness generally that's going to stop with this roster. We don't have the greatest defensive roster. That's what it comes down to. That's why my expectations aren't super high for this team defensively, but how high that ceiling is, how high the Bulls can get defensively, how good they can get defensively over the season. And it may take a month, may take a month and a half, right? But I think if they can make it through the last 50-ish games of the season with figuring out their identity defensively, and like I said, even that is lower of the middle pack or in the lower third of the league, I think what the offense that we have is going to be solid enough. And then we need a stopper on defense, right? And we don't have one. Who turns into that stopper, right? Lonzo, I get it. He's definitely been a stopper defensively over his career. But again, with him being on a minutes restriction, with him being on a back-to-back restriction as of right now, Lonzo Ball isn't going to change the direction of the defense. When he's in, he's going to help. When he's in, he's going to communicate well. He's going to do those things. But again, he's right now on a minutes and a game restriction as far as back-to-backs. You got to have somebody else to step up and do it. Now, that enters Dosnmu. He right now, when you look at it, and I know he's coming off the bench, but he's the one guy that you're looking at on this team that can communicate defensively, has the defensive versatility as far as guarding multiple positions, and is disruptive enough on and off ball defensively to bring some of what we're missing now with not having Alex Caruso. We saw a player like Javonte Green cause havoc for the Chicago Bulls, right, against the Pelicans. We need somebody who's going to step up like that. Now, I do think some other players can bring bits and pieces of it, but you need your defensive guy. You need that guy who's going to help instill some type of defensive intensity and identity for this team. And right now, that's Ayo. Patrick Williams as well in that starting lineup. He is looked at as a defensive anchor. He has to be much better, right? And I think he can be that. You're looking for that as well. And then, of course, who else steps up? Like Modest Bucilis. We've seen him get in passing lanes before in the preseason, right? You know, he can get those block shots. Jalen Smith is another one that can get those kind of highlight reel block shots. But I think overall, this team, the effort that they can consistently give defensively and how high that ceiling is for them is going to really be a big part of the season because I think the offense is going to take care of itself. Now, we got some problems that we need to get into the offense, which we're going to get into next. But just to finish this off, how high that ceiling is for the Bulls defensively, that's going to be a big thing to watch this season, right? Because if it's more like what it was Wednesday, it's going to be a long, difficult, ugly defensive season for the Bulls. And I know some Bulls fans are actually hoping for that, right? We've got a number of guys in the comment section here that are saying, hey, losses are really wins because we're in this Cooper flag sweepstakes. We'll see what happens there. But offensively, right? And so offensively, the Bulls got some things that they need to work out. One is that you need to one thing that can help, determine how our ceiling offensively is Giddey's playmaking, right? And his playmaking has to be great for him to be effective in this offense. And, seeing last game where he scored 11 points, I think, it's not that Giddey can't score to a degree, right? But Giddey's best attribute to this team offensively is going to be playmaking. And I think we saw, us get away from that. Giddey wasn't effective either, very much so. But, and again, I'm not putting it all on Giddey, no, because Kobe White and Zach LaVine are just as big of a part, and we're going to talk a little bit about them as well. But, like, overall playmaking, right? Not even to make it about Josh Giddey. You got Giddey, you got Lonzo in there. And I think it's also important to watch also is that when Lonzo's not playing, right, in games like today where he's not going to be out on the court, who then does do those playmaking duties when Giddey's off the court? Is he going to go to Kobe, right? Does Kobe now be that guy that's staggered with the bench when Lonzo's not playing? Because, yeah, you're able to stagger Giddey with the bench when Lonzo's playing, but, you're going to need that point guard in there, that guy to run the point when Giddey's sitting. And so is that Ayo? Is it Kobe? Is it done by committee, right? Those are things you're looking at for as well. But outside of just the playmaking aspect of it, because we are going to need playmaking, right? That just is what it is. We're moving away from isolation. When you're moving more up-tempo, you need somebody who can make those passes, right? Because theoretically, you want players moving without the ball. So you're going to need that. And so, playmaking in general is something for this team. But then also limiting turnovers. Now, I know it was in that one game, the 21 turnovers, you got to limit those turnovers. You cannot play fast and sloppy, right? If you're going to play fast, you need to be controlled fast, right? You need to be intentional fast. And if you're going to be a more up-tempo, like I said, the Bulls had 108 possessions. 21 of those possessions went into turnovers. So it's like we didn't even really net the benefit of getting more possessions than what we got last season because so many of those possessions still ended up in turnovers. We got to be better at protecting the ball. You cannot be fast and sloppy because if you're fast and sloppy, that's bad, right? The Bulls averaged 96 possessions last year, right? They got 108 possessions this year. But when you take away those 21 possessions, that puts you at 87. Technically, the Bulls had less possessions, less effective possession. Now, again, some of those ended up in turnovers as well with the 96. But just to make my point, right? Like, you don't want to have the turnovers. You have to limit those turnovers. And whatever that means, if that means slowing down more, if that just means it's just a balance thing and a rhythm thing that the Bulls are going to get into that rhythm, cool. But you got to look out for that as well. Next, Kobe has to be more consistent. We need a consistent Kobe White, right? And here's the thing. It's not just about last game. It's more about like the things that we've seen over Kobe's career. We've seen him have these long droughts where he just isn't scoring effectively. We need a consistent Kobe White this year. Now, with the criticism, I'm also going to give some things he did well. I like the way Kobe's moving without the ball, right? That was one of the questions coming into the season is that with taking the ball out of Kobe White's hands, how effective he's going to be off ball. He moved well without being off ball. He even got some good looks. He just didn't hit the shot. So I think if Kobe's more consistent with his consistency is better with the shooting, I think this is going to shape up for Kobe White to have a really big season because I like the way he's moving off the ball. I like the cuts that he's making instinctively. I like how he's trying to get, to the rim. He didn't, he forced some contact. He didn't get to the free throw line like we saw in preseason. But these are all things that I think Kobe's going to benefit by being off ball. And so far through the preseason and the one game in the regular season, I like what he's doing off ball. The shots just have to go in. We need the shots to go in. And Zach also has to be consistent. Yeah, they both got to be consistent this year, right? And Zach LaVine, great first half, but the second half was a lot of the same mistakes that we've seen from Zach LaVine over his career, the turnovers, right? The bouncing the ball off his leg and things like that. Like, we need those regulated also. But then who's going to be the other player that steps up? And it may be a different player every single night, right? In the last game, it was Vooch. Vooch stayed his big ass in the paint, and he had an effective night as a big man. Only taking 2 3-pointers. I like that. I like that a lot, right? And so whether it's Vooch or it's a different player every day that steps up outside of Kobe, outside of Zach, outside of the opportunities he's going to get as well. Like, how many big nights does Io have? Jalen Smith, who had a big night off the bench, how consistent is that going to be for this team, right? Those are things that we're going to look at and get into my next topic. But I think overall, the balance of the offense is really important. And we got to find a way to balance the speed that we want to operate in with limiting turnovers and doing those type of things, but also getting the other guys involved. I think that's really important. And then will Jalen Smith and Io Dosnmu be consistent off the bench? I think that's a huge, important thing for when we're talking about what the ceiling of this Bulls team could be, is how consistent they could be off the bench, right? These are the two players that I see the minutes being the most consistent for this season. Now, I know we're going to go consistently deep into the rotation, right? But I think the matchups could determine who plays 15 minutes, who plays 8, right, in it. But I think Io and Jalen Smith, you're going to look at them hovering. Io's going to hover around 25, 28 minutes per game. And I think Jalen Smith's going to hover between 18 and 20 minutes per game as well. Like, those guys are going to play a lot of minutes. Those are going to be our most consistent bench players, at least to start off the season, right? I think people will find their balance as the season goes on, but we need these guys to be on point. We need Io, we need Jalen Smith to really be on point with what they're bringing off the bench, because if they are, that really does help raise that ceiling for the Bulls team this year. And then lastly on this list, coaching. Listen, coaching, I hold myself accountable. Too often do we talk about things and aspects of teams and what works, what doesn't work, when a lot of it comes down to coaching. Not everything. The players, like I said, they got to execute on the court. But coaching is very important to this team. Adjustments. We made no adjustments in the second half of the game, or if we did make adjustments, they weren't the right ones, and the Pelicans were ready for it. That's coaching, right? The players aren't one of themselves going to make these huge schematic adjustments. That's up to the coaching staff to do. And it's up to them to find the right balance of the rotation and the right players for what they need out there on the court for any given night. So coaching is a huge important part. I came into the season saying Billy Donovan is going to have to get into his coaching bag this year. And while no 10-minute stints, the 10-man rotation, having Lonzo on when Josh Giddey was off are all good things that sound great, right? But the execution of how we go about those things is going to be hugely important as well for this team. So, we got to find balance, and coaching is a big part of that, because players aren't checking themselves in and out, right? So you got to find those rotations that work the most for you, and find times when it makes right to keep players out there for stretches so they can work through some things. And so hopefully overall, like, we see a better bench production from this team. Like I said, out in the last game, outside of Jalen Smith, who made 5 shots, and everybody else on the bench, we had like 8 total shots made, right? And 4 of those came from Io Dosnmu. We need more from this bench. But again, you got to have the right players out there at the right time, and let's hope that we see that as well. So that's kind of my thoughts on some of the things that are really going to be important for this Bulls team to figure out that could really determine what the ceiling is, the real ceiling is for this Bulls team, because you got Bulls fans that think we can win 40 games. You got Bulls fans that think we're going to struggle to win 25, right? So those are going to be big things to determine that. Now, we got a game today against the OKC Thunder, and I want to talk about what to look for. Now, I know I just went through things that could affect the ceiling. There's going to be some overlap in this, but I think things that I'm looking for from the Bulls in this game, maintaining movement and flow for the entire game. We got away from it in the second half of the game. You want to do that for the full game, and the reasons are obvious. When you move without the ball, you create easier opportunities for yourself. That's what you got to do. And then on top of the pace that you want to run with, you need to be able to make those quick decisions, and what helps that is moving consistently without the ball giving those angles for your guards to get you the ball, but also creating opportunities for yourself. We got to do that. We have to maintain our movement off the ball, and we got to maintain our flow. We got completely thrown off the flow that we established in the first half of the game in the second half. You don't want to do that. That puts you on your heels as a team, right? And that puts you in a place where now the defense, hey, they're not adjusting well, right? They're back to getting stagnant. Now, this is our time to cook. So you want to look out for that. And while the Milwaukee Bucks aren't the greatest team defensively, right? So it's not like I'm like, but they're a team that can take advantage of us defensively if we're not locked in. And so you have to, that offensive side of the ball, you got to be locked in. You got to be locked in. You got to do it. And one of the questions I have as well on things to look for this is who plays the point when Josh Giddey is sitting, right? With no Lonzo in this game. So that means you're losing one of your playmakers. In the half court, especially, Lonzo Ball is a great playmaker. He got Jalen involved in the game. Lonzo got Vooch some easy buckets as well. Like, now who turns into that on-ball creator for you, right? And I don't mean creating for yourself. I mean creating for others. Or are we going to have to do more of the things where we spread it out, right? Because we don't have that luxury of having Lonzo Ball. So that's a big thing. And then, of course, the rotations. The rotations, it was interesting, right? To see 11 players check into a game in the first half of a game was really interesting to see. And it's just something you don't see a lot happen across the NBA. Now, the right players out there at the right time is a key part in that as well. Like, while we did play Manas Busilis, he played 5 minutes. Can you really expect him to get in rhythm? I'm not a THT guy, right? I'm not that at all. But THT is a guy that over the course of his NBA career, right? He's averaged 21 minutes per game. And he shot 42% from the field in those 28 minutes and 29% from three-point range and 9.8 points per game. And the question is like, now that he is a bench player, right, which he's been majority for his career, he's only started 55 out of 248 games, but when he's not getting those level of minutes, can you really expect him to get production for you, right? So you got to ask those questions to yourself. How do you get the most out of players while you're trying to spread the rotation this thin? And it's possible, right? I don't want to act like it's not that it's impossible to do, but it's how you do it, right? So balancing and managing those rotations is going to be hugely important for that. You look at the players that got double-digit minutes off the bench where Lonzo, those 14 minutes are going to be out there, right, to spread out. But you got 25 from Dosnmu, you got 17 from Jalen Smith, and 12 from Julian Phillips. So now with Lonzo Ball not being in this game, how are those 14 minutes distributed? Does now Taylor Horton-Tucker get 12 minutes instead of 8? Does Julian Phillips now get 15 instead of 12? And does it help them get in rhythm? Does Manas Busilis get into double-digit minutes now, right? Those are the things to look out for in this game as well, that I'm just interested to see how it balances out, because the balance is the most important thing here. So, again, just things that I'm looking for in this game offensively from the Chicago Bulls team. But then let's get to the defense. We got to be better on the perimeter defensively. We got to be better in our performance defensively in general, right? One of the biggest things that we are missing on this team is a communicator on the defensive side of the ball. We had we had Caruso in prior years, right? We had that. We had Lonzo Ball before that. And while Lonzo is back on the team, right, playing, he's not playing in this game. And it can't all fall to Dosnmu. Now, Torrey Craig, as a veteran, can communicate as well. I want to be clear. Everybody communicates a little bit, but who really takes and grab that bull by the horns and takes the leadership of getting everybody on the same page defensively, executing the way that we need them to execute? That's one of the things that watching this game, but just overall the execution of the defensive scheme. There was a scheme in last game. We were in a box 2-3. We didn't run it well. So it made the scheme look like it was non-existent and like shit, quite frankly. And we just need to be better in our performance and execution of that. Do we get a better execution defensively? Again, I'm not saying that we all of a sudden need to flip the script from being a bad defensive team to a good defensive team. I'm just saying, hell, we don't even know. We can't even answer that question while we can't even execute defensively. Be better at that. Be better at the effort, right? Fight over screens, which we were doing in the first half of the game. Those are the things I'm looking for defensively from the Bulls in this game. And listen, the Milwaukee Bucks ain't coming in like they won their first game of the season. We're coming in with no wins. They're coming in with all wins, right? So, that's the thing right now, but they're also at home. So how do you deal with that momentum shift that's bound to happen at some point in time? You got Dame scoring 30 points in the team's first game, 30 of them, right? And we don't really have other than Dosnmu, a guard stopper. So it's going to be really interesting to watch that. Now, again, we don't have anybody to stop Giannis. He scored 25 points in that first game. But again, while our defense in the middle is trash, Giannis Antetokounmpo can absolutely murder us there, right? So we got to be better in those areas, and hopefully we are in today's game, and we'll see what it brings us. Last topic before we go, and this is just an interesting one for my team nerds, right? The Chicago Bulls ranked 6th in the NBA in profit. The Bulls made $5 billion. Billion, right? That is we are the 6th most valuable team in the NBA. We have a profitable franchise of $5 billion. 5 of them, right? Now, we rank 6th. We're behind the Golden State Warriors at $8 billion. The New York Knicks at $7.5 billion. The Los Angeles Lakers at $7.1 billion. The Celtics at $6 billion. The Clippers at $5.5 billion. And then you got the Bulls. Then you got the Rockets, the Nets, Mavs, and 76ers below us, right? And so this, of course, is going to be another one of those things that triggers some Bulls fans, because it comes down to it is that we are a cheap franchise. I think that's just evident, right? And this isn't even just about spending into the luxury tax. Like, you don't necessarily have to spend into the luxury tax to be a good team, right? I don't believe that. But at the end of the day, when you have a team that's that is in the top 10 of revenue, you expect them to be a little bit more experimental when it comes down to it, right? We got to be better at that. We got to be better as far as getting things done. And it just goes to show again, like, the Bulls, money isn't the Bulls' problem. That it can be made the problem because we either don't use it well, or we're afraid to use it, or whatever else it is. Like, it really sucks when it comes down to it. That the Bulls are making so much profit, and there's not that much of it that comes from my merch sales. I want to be clear there, y'all. Stop it. I don't spend that much money on merch, but it's just one of the things you look at and you say, the Bulls are making $5 billion, the 6th most profitable franchise in the NBA, and yet we operate like a small market team. And, for the people that say sell the team, well, I'm not one of those people. I'm not one of the sell the team people because, again, Jerry Reinsdorf isn't running the day-to-day, but it adds more merit to that conversation, right? I understand why people say sell the team. It sucks. And, hey, that's why Jerry's probably never letting this team go. Never letting this team go. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Shy Bear. I'm sorry. Why I always want to get the Bear stuff? Make sure you guys are following the show at Bull Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number 1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.